Hello, good evening and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you most kindly for joining us on the program tonight. Tonight, we turn the spotlight on the growing outrage over President Ahmed Tinubu's fresh $24 billion loan request to the National Assembly, a move that could push Nigeria's total debt stock to an alarming 183 trillion naira. Again, 183 trillion naira. The breakdown of the proposed borrowing plan reveals a mix of $21.5 billion, 2.19 billion euros and 15 billion Japanese yen, and a 65 million euro grant, all aimed at funding infrastructure and stimulating job creation. But the critics argue that with the current situation in the country, with Nigeria already battling a crushing debt service burden, the additional 34.15 trillion naira loan request is unsustainable and threatens to further destabilize Nigeria's fragile economy. So, to help us unpack these concerns, we'll be joined in the studio in a moment by Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu, a development economist from the University of Abuja. But first, the approval and as well as the reaction of the National Assembly to the request put forward by the President.
The external borrowing rolling plan includes $21.54 billion, 2.19 billion euros, and 15 billion in Japanese yen, along with a 65 million euro grant. These funds, according to the President, will be channeled into projects that have already undergone technical and economic evaluations. President Tinubu said the borrowing became necessary following the removal of fuel subsidies, dwindling domestic revenues, and the need to support key government programs. Also included is a $2 billion bond program to be issued in the local market but denominated in foreign currencies. The President explained that these would allow local investors to participate in foreign currency assets, deepen Nigerians' financial markets, and shore up foreign reserves.
Including sectors of power, railways, healthcare, amongst others. Given the urgent nature of these needs and the importance of stabilizing the economy, it is crucial to seek the constitution and approval of the distinguished Senate for the 2025 to 2026 external borrowing plan.
The Senate President has referred all requests to the Committee on Local and Foreign Debts for legislative scrutiny. The senator representing Abia North, Orji Uzor Kalu, has dismissed speculations that the growing wave of endorsements for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's re-election bid in 2027 is a response to fears about opposition coalitions. Instead, the former Senate Chief Whip emphasized that the endorsements are driven by President Tinubu's bold leadership and transformative policies. Addressing members of the Senate Press Corps in Abuja on Tuesday, Senator Kalu, who chairs the 10th Senate Committee on Southeast Development Commission, asserted that the All Progressive Congress APC has no fear of any coalition, describing the party as passionate about Nigeria and focused on nation building. According to him, criticism from the opposition is expected and even necessary in a democratic setting, noting that such criticism should not be mistaken for weakness on the part of the ruling party.
I don't think that a party like APC have anybody to fear about. We are a ruling party. We are passionate about Nigeria. We love Nigeria, and that is why most of us are building industries all over Nigeria, so Nigerian people can have jobs, even not government.
On Tinubu's economic policies, Senator Kalu praised the president for making tough but necessary choices like subsidy removal and exchange rate unification, acknowledging the current hardships but emphasizing that these changes were essential for long-term national stability. He maintained that Tinubu's policies are already impacting the macroeconomic level and projected that their benefits would soon reach everyday Nigerians.
There are only some few things that are not happening. the indices of Mr. President policy might not be walking down the line. People are still suffering. Yes, I agree that. But it started trickling in on the macro level. That's on the upper level, not on the lower level. So I'm hoping that in the next 2-3 years, the policies of Mr. President will trickle down and Nigerians will appreciate what Mr. President is doing.
Senator Kalu also urged all Nigerian leaders, regardless of party affiliation, to speak the truth and focus on uplifting the people rather than trading blame or harboring bitterness.
Well, some of the views there from the Nigerian National Assembly, the Senate to be precise, about the president's request, which, as you can imagine, is going to receive expedited action, of course, considering that they're going to expectedly do their due diligence as it is required. But of course, just like many other national developments, this is one issue that continues to polarize Nigerians, alongside the concerns as well as the economic outlook that the country has. So let's just give you a quick breakdown of the timelines of the several loan requests as well as approvals that the Tinubu administration got since inception back in 2023. Now, just a couple of months in, the administration accessed the $800 million loan from the World Bank in July of 2023. We understand that $500 million of that, $500 million has already been released, and that is of course targeting the social safety net program, which according to the administration is trying to keep some of these vulnerable households afloat. I mean, most recently we understand that a significant percent, not necessarily a significant percentage, but at least 5 million households are being targeted out of the 15 million plus that is already on the social register. Now, a couple of months down the line, in the last quarter of 2023, by November, the administration also accessed yet another loan from the Africa Development Bank, as well as EWG, that is also the World Bank Group, to the tune of $7.8 billion and 100 million euros. And this was by design supposed to go into infrastructure and other capital projects. Then, fast forward to June 13, 2024, $2.5 billion from the World Bank, targeting economic reforms and revenue mobilization. Also in the same month of June of 2024, $3.3 billion from Afrexim Bank, which was targeting currency stabilization and economic growth. Of course, there's a lot of breakdowns as to how all of this is supposed to be targeted, right? But this year, just a little over 24 hours ago, the request for $21.5 billion was put in. This is going to come from the World Bank, the AFDB, from Japanese partners, and a whole of that breakdown. This is, of course, all a part of the 2025 to 2026 external borrowing plans for critical projects. Now, there is also the domestic bond that has been launched, and the target is around 757.9 billion naira. This is, of course, aiming to address settlements of pensions liabilities, which the government is obliged to address. Now, you do the maths, you understand that the concern is somewhere around the debt profile ballooning to 183 trillion naira. Now, that is quite an astronomical figure that Nigeria has to contend with. But the Tinubu administration is saying there is nothing to fret about, because even the Minister of the Economy and Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, says, listen, Nigerians don't have to worry about ballooning national debt. In fact, this is nothing to worry about, because all of the other indicators are suggesting that this is something that we can chew. So the administration is not biting something that it cannot chew. But of course, those concerns remain quite germane. There are some on so many other sides who argue for and against this national debt that appears to be eating deep into our annual budget, because we have to spend significant sums of money in servicing some of these debts, and we've seen our debt servicing significantly go up year on year, and that in itself means that the government has limited funds to actually attend to some of the pressing needs that it has to address in terms of infrastructure, in terms of welfare, in terms of all of the other programs and policies that the government is trying to implement. Let's speak to our guest now, who's joined the conversation virtually, actually. Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu has joined the conversation virtually via Zoom this evening. Doctor, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's good to see you again.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Right. Where do you stand on this? Because it is one issue that continues to divide Nigerians alongside the issues of sustainability, leveraging the future. What kind of exposure is this, bringing Nigeria for the long term? What are some of the risks? What do you make of all of this, especially looking at the record of the Tinubu administration over the last 2 years? How much was borrowed and how much is still being considered as far as loans are concerned?
Well, the amount of the money that is being borrowed by an economy suggests the health of such an economy. How the economy is such that produces to sustain its liabilities. And then for a robust economy, the assets of such economy, the total sums of production must exceed the country's liabilities. And if reverse is the case, where you have the country's liabilities to be more than what the country is producing, then it means that there is something to fear. It's just like any normal business. When you establish a business, the thinking is the business should thrive, the business should be able to expand, and then you could be able to break even and make profit. But when you have a business that is not bringing in much profit that will pay for your labor, that will restock, that will pay for power, and pay for the services of those that are equally being employed to man such businesses, it means that you are operating at a deficit and at a loss. And that calls for a review. So what we are doing tonight is a review of Nigerian economy. And then we're saying that borrowing is a sign that the economy is not able to sustain itself to the extent that you need to borrow in order to sustain production, to stabilize the naira, to reform, and so on and so forth. So it's a sign of unhealthy economy to start with.
Yeah, but doctor, some would say that's a bit unfair because most economies, big or small, function with loans like this, because without these loans, development is almost certainly going to be too slow for the health of not just the economy, but the people of the country. What, in your view, is unhealthy about what we're experiencing here, year on year?
You see, let us even start with the independence of countries that are borrowing. At a point in time in our national lives, Nigeria was borrowing Britain money because we're producing and we're able to sustain ourselves, and we have a lot to equally sustain other economies. Nigeria was able to contribute significantly to the liberation of Southern African countries, Angola, Mozambique, South Africa. That was a period that Murtala Mohammed said that Nigeria has come of age, that we are not under the orbit of any extraterritorial powers that would dictate to us. So when you are borrowing, it comes with a lot of challenges. And the first is what we've been witnessing since we started borrowing money in this country, which is the interference in our trajectory, growth or otherwise, by the lenders organization. We know how the World Bank and the IMF have used debt to twist us, to make us to devalue our naira, which is what we are still doing up to this moment. We've lost our independence to act. At a point that we're expecting Nigeria to take a decisive leadership in Africa, Nigeria will be missing. This is all boils down to one thing, that we do not have the independence to take action. For instance, we tell the Chinese what to do. Nobody, because the Chinese are really producing their needs and they are sufficient to some reasonable extent. And if they are borrowing to finance innovation, to invest in the future. They are not borrowing to consume, to reform, and to do some mundane things that will not add value to the economy. So if you look at the price that is being paid in terms of the loan we've been taking, the independence of Nigeria that has been taken away by the lender organizations, the lenders organization telling us where to put the money, not where we want to put the money. In fact, it is even painful that from a nation that was borrowing other nations money, that was supporting liberation struggles around Africa with our resources, including human and material, and that today we are borrowing, is a shame that we find ourselves in this situation. And it shows that we are not doing enough as a country to harness our resources to be able to support ourselves as a people and as a nation. How do you explain that we are borrowing to target vulnerable households? What happens to the granite pyramid that we used to have? What happened to the cocoa belt? What happened to the red oil? What happened to the leather industry in this country, to the extent that we are able to earn enough to be able to support whatever policies, whatever we want to do? You remember the Odoji award?
I believe we're struggling with the connection to Dr. Abu Hamisu there. We're going to work on it to reestablish that connection so we can further the conversation on this debt crisis. Yet again, Nigerians are faced with another dilemma following President Tinubu's request to the Nigerian Senate requesting yet another batch of loans, external and domestic, that would help aid the execution of critical projects for 2025 and 2026. And of course, we're just showing you there some of the data available tracking the history of the borrowing under the Tinubu administration. And as you can imagine, the ceiling is, of course, the biggest concern that most experts have. Dr. Abu Hamisu, we lost the connection there for a moment, so you might want to recap what you were saying.
So the point is simple. As a result of borrowing, I'm just trying to compare and contrast when Nigeria was doing a lot to be able to earn the resources that it needed to deploy to education, to health, to infrastructure, to equally support other nations. There was a time that Nigeria supported Britain, as I earlier mentioned. Nigeria supported liberation struggles across Africa is because we have the resources, and then we did not allow anybody to dictate to us. But today, we've lost that very particular pristine recognition and independence that made us to act the way we deemed fit. Our independence has been taken away. Today, our economy is being controlled from Washington and from other state capitals all over the world. Look at it consistently. Since the time we started borrowing up to today, majority of the persons that have become ministers of finance in Nigeria are people that are trained by IMF, World Bank. Today, we can no longer take independent decisions the way the Russians are doing. We can no longer take independent decisions the way the Chinese are doing. Even we cannot even take independent decisions the way the Indians are doing. Now, if we are borrowing to finance innovation, that is the technology for the future, we are talking about things that we needed to put in place, for instance, infrastructure, and we're seeing those infrastructure on the ground. We're seeing industrialization, the coming back of our industries, and we don't have any problem. But that we are borrowing to reform what in Nigeria? What do you need to borrow for to reform Nigeria, for God's sake? And that we are equally borrowing to target vulnerable household. It shows that we have a lot of problems. How do we move from a robust economy to humanitarian economy that is dependent on our handout and borrowing to survive? This is a country that is well respected across the globe because we have the resources to deploy to pursue whatever. We restore democracy, peace, and security to African countries that were in need under ECOMOG. And it's because we have the resources. So, but today we are just a humanitarian economy that is waiting on the international donor organizations or borrowing in order for us to do what we need to do. We did not borrow when Nigeria built Ahmed University or the premier university in the West, or the University of Nsukka of this world. most of the institutions that are still surviving up to this moment, from the regional government, go and check. They never borrowed money. So I'm asking, what happened? What did we get wrong? What is this? What are those things that those people did that we are not doing? Under the northern government, we have the granite pyramids of this world. We have the cocoa belt. We have the oil belt from the Niger Delta. So what is that thing that our forefathers did that we did not do? And then we are saying that we are consoling ourselves that the debt are not alarming. They are not alarming. Who is going to pay for it? Calculate the payment duration. You see that we are beginning to saddle the next generation, 2 to 3 generations with debt ahead of their own time. We don't even know whether they will have something serious more than COVID, or they will have something serious that is threatening the globe, like the crisis and conflict that we're having all over the world. Right. So when you're talking about debt, you are talking about a serious situation that is going to really affect the next generation, because when we're taking this debt, we don't even consult with them. We don't take them into consideration. When the Indians, the Chinese are trying to innovate, to do things, to live infrastructure, to live structures for next generation so that they can be able to compete, we are saddling the next generation with the payment of debt that they are not a party to.
Right. Doctor, I just wanted to point out, I mean, just a couple of days ago, the federal government confirmed the full repayment of the $3.4 billion emergency loan secured from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, during the COVID-19 experience, right? And of course, for the most part, we understand from the comments made earlier in the year by the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy that Nigeria is slowly but surely moving away from concessional and commercial funding. Some of those concerns that you have there, that these loans have some stringent requirements that may likely undermine our economy. But also, zoom out a little bit, Doctor, and you understand that as far as global development is concerned, I mean, you look at the G7, for instance, the 7 most dominant economies in the world, right? The United States, which is arguably the biggest economy, the most advanced economy in the world. The projections are looking quite bleak for Americans, because there is an understanding that the projections from 2024 to 2029, America's debt is going to grow by 134%. And our rating so far is still good. I mean, we're not a risky country to lend to. So, I mean, how much of these alarmist viewpoints should we counter, just to really understand that realistically speaking, if we need those roads, if we need those schools built, if we need the infrastructure and the investment that we so desire as one of the biggest economies on the continent, that these loans are an inevitable necessity?
I beg to disagree. You see, we are too comfortable with loans because we refuse to fix our universities, to fix our research institutions that have capacity to develop this nation. Nation develop when people are empowered to develop. It's either you pay for development, or you steal the technology that you need for development, or you work on your people to become developed. Let me give you this instance. Go and check, and it is something that you can check anywhere in the world. How much Lee Kuan Yew borrowed to develop Singapore? Go and check. What did Lee Kuan Yew do? Basically, 3 things. He reformed the educational sector, changed the people's mindset so that they will become development inclined, savings inclined, and then self-reliant. So the second thing he did was to fix the universities to produce the kind of people you want to see, the kind of engineers, the kind of investors, entrepreneurs that you want to see. And then he was able to create a climate that really support the growth of business. And so there was nothing like bandits, there was nothing like kidnappers, there is nothing like power outage. And so industries were not relocating. They were they were coming to Singapore. The same thing the Chinese did. They modernized, they trained their people. And today we are the highest consumers of the product that the Chinese are producing. Because we cannot fund development, and then we are not willing to work on ourselves to be able to develop our country, we resort to doing what? To borrowing. You know, right from day one, Nigeria is used to spending to get under bridges, over bridges, and anything built, even our national stadiums. We never build them. We don't have the technology. We paid for them. And today, the money is not there. And instead of us to look inward by fixing our universities, by fixing our research institutions, so that we can start the way the Chinese started. I bet you when the Chinese phone hit the market, we're all laughing because of the embarrassing nature of the ringtone. Today, they are producing one of the best phones you could be proud of in the whole wide world. They started from somewhere. So it is not, we shouldn't even comfort ourselves to say that because America is borrowing. America is borrowing because of its own mistake. It was because of the senseless war that America embarked on since 1990s to date that finished America. But even at that, we can't compare the level of innovation in America and Nigeria. What is that innovation that we have in Nigeria? What is the innovation that is coming out of our universities? What about our research institutions? What is the innovation? In the 70s, I mean, was it 70s or 80s? Yes. Malaysia came to Nigeria to take our palm sample of our palm kernel. And today they are the highest exporters of red oil to the international market. What about us? We are not doing anything. NIFO, they're supposed to be responsible for that. What is the innovation? What is that breakthrough that you are seeing that is coming from NIFO in Edo State? Is it our Science and Technology Ministry? What is that innovation that is coming there? How much are we paying Julius Beza to build roads? How much are we paying CCECC to build roads for us in this country? And as we speak, the local contractors that are the engine of growth, go and check. Wherever local contractors are working, whether they are building culvert or anything at the local level, you will see economy, informal economy developing around that construction site. Because the locals will come to sell pure water to them, to sell that sachet water that we use popularly. The rice vendors will come, and then before you know, people that will come and register SIMs for them will come, open bank account for them will come, and these very particular local contractors are being owed, they are not being paid. And so when you are borrowing and local contractors are not being paid, infrastructure development are stalled. The roads that are being built are substandard. Some of the roads, as soon as they are being built and the motorists are using them, they are bad again. You don't need to go far. All you need is to travel from Abuja to Babalada. You understand what I'm talking about. Where infrastructure, especially roads that we rely on, that have been built and have not been commissioned, are still bad again. So it is a self-inflicted pain. Let us not pat ourselves on the back to say that all is well when we know that all is not well.
Right. Okay, Doctor, let's counterbalance some of the points here. Is it your view that loans are inherently bad? And if that's the case, where are we going to get the money to fund the much needed infrastructure to bring ourselves up to par? And some would say, Doctor, why are you comparing Nigeria of today with the China of today? I mean, clearly we have different journeys in our road to nationhood. I mean, the trade-off is that you look at how, China evolved from the days of Chairman Mao, for instance. I mean, the death toll there and the tragedy of all of this is quite telling. I mean, it sounds like we're comparing apples and oranges. But if the argument is debts or loans are bad for business, especially for an economy like Nigeria, for instance, what is the alternative? Where are we going to get the money to build the roads, the rails, and everything else that we need?
I ask again, how did the Chinese get the money to build the railway they are building? How are the Indians getting the money they are getting? You see, what is happening in Nigeria is simple. We are people that are given to easy way out to things. And because we want easy way out of things, we equally get ourselves into deeper problems and deeper trouble. I've just given you the alternative to what you are asking. Then just fix our universities, equip them. Then you have solutions to your problems. You don't need to import anybody. You don't need to import the Indians. You don't need to import the Chinese to come and work for us. You don't need to import the Germans to come and work for us. We will do our thing, just the way the Indians are doing it, just the way the Chinese are doing it, the way the Russians are doing it. That is one. Secondly, I am not saying that loans are bad, but what are we using the loans for? Loans that will be looted or loans that will be used to deliver substandard products and projects? Go and check how much in debt we've sunk And then the same roads that we are talking about. Which of the roads are motorable in Nigeria today? The roads are either under construction, or they are still being constructed, or the portion that has been constructed is bad. Look at the East-West road. For more than how many years? For more than 20 years, that road has not been completed. And then you blame who for that? We will blame ourselves. So I am saying that as a business, if you know that you cannot and you will not be able to manage your resources wisely, and then you are going bankrupt, and then instead of you to look inward to diagnose yourself of the challenges that has made you to become almost bankrupt, and then you go to the bank again to take another loan, then be rest assured that you will still go bankrupt because you've not addressed the challenges that made you to go almost bankrupt in the first instance. So we're taking loans. Since we started taking loans in this country, the question we're asking is, what is the impact of these loans on the lives of Nigerians? Has it improved their well-being, or it has decreased their well-being? And I want to say, without any equivocation, that it has impacted negatively on the well-being of Nigerians. And that could be seen from the ratio of persons that are in poverty from when we started taking loan up to today. What is the ratio of people in poverty in 1970s, and what is the ratio today? It will tell you what is the purchasing power of people in even 1990s, as far back as 1990s and today. And then we continue to borrow. To me, it's a mark of insanity that we continue to do the same things and we're expecting different results. So I give you this, and I said, when the Chinese wanted to fix their country, they fixed their university, they fixed their mindset, the people became pro-savings, and from those savings, they were able to raise money for development. Lee Kuan Yew did the same thing. He brought two reforms that changed how the Singaporeans were able to get money to invest in businesses, even in stock. The first thing was to ensure that any working Singaporean has national insurance premium. And then it went further to enhance the hygiene of the people, the awareness of the people about their hygiene and their environment. And what that did was many people were not getting sick, and the money was not being spent on health. So even if they are going to spend it on healthcare, it's going to be within Singapore. So you are not going to travel abroad. What happened to our own NHIS? At a point, Professor Yusuf alleged that those monies were being looted. So the money that was reinvested in the economy in Singapore, in Nigeria, was looted. So tell me, how do you want us to develop? Where people will save money in the bank and their money will not come out, or they will pay for houses that will not come out. So tell me how we're able to develop in such a situation. Now, if you look at what is happening in the housing scheme, a lot of government houses are being built, and people are paying through their contributory pension scheme. Now, this is how you improve infrastructure. The last time under President Muhammadu Buhari, there was Sukuk Fund, and the Sukuk Fund was more or less like a bond. And the public was financed. And then anywhere you go to, you see Sukuk. And we're even happy that, okay, we are beginning to look inward to raise money to develop our infrastructure. So what is this very particular inclinations towards borrowing money from institutions that we know will never allow us to develop, will never allow us to achieve the potentials in us? What is that very particular fancy that is leading us to these institutions, when other countries like China, like Britain, and even Kenya are using Sukuk to raise money to build infrastructure? Yeah. So why? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Yeah. We have other alternatives.
But as you can imagine, Doctor, right, the scale of the problem versus the scale of the solution is one of the reasons why, according to the government, we need to look elsewhere. Because this particular month, like a couple of days ago, last week in fact, right, the federal government launched the 300 billion naira sukuk for road projects. So it's safe to say that the Tinubu administration, like some administrations in the past, are also exploring some of those available options. But I mean, 300 billion naira, for instance, even if it's a trillion naira, looking at the quantum of the scale of the problem, the competing needs, and so on and so forth, one would say that is something that we have to consider additional funding for. But talk to me about what the economists have been using as a metric to gauge what is healthy, what is risky, what is uncertain or unstable. The idea behind debt to GDP has been used to make arguments for or against our borrowing pattern. And as far as the international parameter is concerned, the acceptable, the ideal is at 60%. And based on current data, Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio is around 52.9%. So is it not safe to say that according to the facts, according to the data, we don't have anything to worry about just yet?
Yes. That is how economics behave until the bubble bursts. Meltdown, when meltdown started, like a joke, they all told us nothing to worry about. It's just a clash between demand and supply that will, in the long run, sort itself out, because demand and supply will regulate itself. And what did we get? A total meltdown. Government has to intervene to save people's savings. So the question that I want to ask is, who is actually going to pay for it, whether it is within the threshold or not? Yes, it may be within the threshold as we have it now, but if we continue along this one particular trajectory, then we are going to hand over a nation to our children that is of no value, because the value has been emptied out before the next generation will take over. And I'm asking, is it a crown that we must wear? Is it a crown that we must wear? Why should we, even as, are we not selling oil like Saudi Arabia? Are we not selling oil like United Arab Emirates? What happened when they were investing in infrastructure? What happened when they were investing in human resource development? What happened when they were investing in the technology for the future? What did we do with our money? We shared it among the state governors, and from the state governors, we shared it among party loyalists, and we continue to share until now that we are borrowing money to finance development. I want to say this: if we're able to revamp our educational sector and we're able to fix our universities and research institutions, with the 300 billion you're talking about, we will be able to do a lot, because we don't need to import anything. We don't need to import anybody. But if our economy is based on, for instance, the number of technicians that Dangote need, it will have to go to India to get those technicians. You know what that means? It means we have unemployment in Nigeria, and this is opportunity, a technical one, that our people are not able to take care of. So invariably, those are supposed to contribute to the economy by earning maybe 10-digit figures, because they are working in Dangote refineries, are not able, are not able to do that. You know why? Because our educational system is not producing market-demanded people that can add value to the economy. And that is why we're having mounting unemployment in this country. It's a structural unemployment that is conditioned by the kind of curriculum that we're using to teach our people. Consider the amount that is being spent by China on developing their railway system, because they own the technology and they are not going to import anybody to come and work for them. And the amount we give contract in Nigeria, go and check how much the Chinese are building a kilometer of road and how much you are building. So if you have your technology developed, if you are borrowing because you need other components. So it becomes what? Complementary. But when we are borrowing to finance what I would choose to call consumption, for instance, reform. For instance, you want to give conditional cash transfer to some vulnerable groups that we produce ourselves because of our insensitivity, the plight of the people, to the economic indicators. So it is not that we need to console ourselves because we've not reached the threshold to GDP ratio or to 60%. Those are all, as far as I'm concerned, mere consolation that is telling us no problem, no problem. But as our debt continues to mount, our well-being continues to deteriorate, because even the simple services that we enjoyed before, we are no longer enjoying them, because the money we are using to service the debt is almost equal to the GDP. So I would rather say that we need to fix our education system so that we are able to produce people that will contribute to the development of the economy, so that the economy can generate the kind of resources that we need to fix the infrastructure, the innovation, the technology for the future that we need to grow as a nation. So we have other countries to learn from, not the bad ones that are borrowing, but those ones that have solved their own problems by themselves using innovative approach that do not compromise their economy or their independence as a nation.
Right, and let's just go back to that infograph that we have there, because it's important to provide some sort of context as to what is tied to these loans. Now, we saw the first one, which was the initial loan. We got $500 million from the World Bank as the last reporting, which is supposed to target the social safety net program, the conditional cash transfer situation with palliatives for vulnerable households and individuals. Then the next one from the AFDB and the World Bank Group are also tied to infrastructure and sectoral projects. Then the next one from the World Bank, economic reforms and revenue mobilization. The next one is about currency stabilization and economic growth to the tune of $3.3 billion from a Afrexim Bank. Not necessarily sure if those funds were successfully released in full. And then this particular one tied to critical road projects. Some would argue, Doctor, that it makes a lot of sense if you consider what these monies are being used for, especially like the last one, the domestic bond of 757.9 billion settlement for pension liabilities, because we all know the precarious situation that some of our pensioners are in right now. I mean, is there a version of this for you that makes realistic sense, that this is why this is needed? I mean, it is not something you would want, but it's something that you need.
Oh, okay, very good. We should clap for ourselves that some persons who worked for federal government of Nigeria for 60 years, for 65 years, for 70 years, or 35 years of age, and that we did not plan their exit, and that all they worked for and all the time they worked is more or less like telling me that your wife is pregnant and for 9 months you never made any preparation for safe delivery and for the clothes and food that child will wear or eat. That is just it. So for me, it's a failure of our lack of planning, because the day you employ a person to work for government, you know that there is exit, and that exit will come depending on the age of retirement, either attaining 60 or 65 years of age, or 70 years as the case may be, or 35 years of service to the nation. In all of these 35 years, you did not plan. You need to borrow to offset that. That is a failure on our own part. And secondly, you're talking about social safety, safety, and then you are borrowing money for that. It shows that the state has failed in its constitutional responsibility. And the chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution stated that the resources of the nation will be harnessed to pursue the welfare of the people of Nigeria. In other words, that the resources of Nigeria will be harnessed for the benefit of the people by enhancing the welfare of the people. So if at this juncture we are borrowing to pay pensioners, we are equally borrowing for social safety nest, we are equally borrowing for revenue mobilization and reforms. What does it take to reform? That is the question. Do we need such amount of money to reform? What does it take to reform? That is why I'm saying that if we're interested in exiting this very particular debt trap, there are a lot of things that we need to do. One, if, for instance, that very particular component of the debt that was tied to infrastructure, we are going to use it to provide infrastructure, good. Well, it will add value to the economy, because infrastructure not only lead to multiply effect, it equally lead to ease of doing business. Because if the roads are good, you can move efficiently from one point to another. But if the roads are not good, a means of communication is very poor, and then on top of that, you do not have all the required gadgets for security provisioning, then we have a problem. Assuming our airports are bad, we have a problem. So, but when you are borrowing for consumption, then there is a problem. Because these things that we are going to consume and that we are going to pay for, eventually we are going to pay back the loan, and then we'll pay back the loan. And at what interest rate are we going to pay back? Assuming all of the loan you were talking about tonight is tied to 1, the reindustrialization of Nigeria, 2, fixing our educational system, 3, railway interconnectivity, 4, revamping our roads, 5, building world-class markets and communication channels that will aid business, that will bring people to Nigeria, that will stem insecurity so that existing businesses will not relocate and then new ones will come to Nigeria. Honestly, I have no problem with that. If we are following a developmental trajectory that fix our problems, then I don't have a problem with that. So why can't we have a component in that very particular loan that seeks to fix our educational system, that seeks to support research?
Doctor, a lot of people would say you're actually speaking to what the Tinubu administration wrote in that letter to the Nigerian Senate. I mean, they're directly targeting some of these issues that you've raised right now, whether it's infrastructure, human capital development, and all of these things, road projects, all of these things. That's exactly what the administration is saying it needs all these funds to do. And as you can imagine, without these monies, some of these campaign promises or whatever is in the Renewed Hope manifesto might not necessarily come to light. But in the final analysis, in your view, as we wrap things up, give me a sense of how much faith you have in this administration to turn things around, because we tapped into the IMF funding during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, and the Tinubu administration, like I did say earlier, just confirmed that it has paid off that $3.5 billion. And some people think that's something commendable. In 5 years, we're able to repay the principal sum. I mean, there's still the outstanding interest. But is there anything that this administration is doing that gives you a sense of, renewed hope that maybe there's going to be something that is different but effective in terms of managing some of these limited resources?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I am not seriously convinced that majority of these loans will be different from the loans that we've had before, where we have loans on papers and then we do not see development that are commensurable to the loans that we've taken. And then in the long run, we'll remove hefty amounts to pay back loans that have not generated anything close to, equal to, or equivalent to what we've received. I hope to be disappointed.
Doctor? All right, I think he was even trying to use the word disappointed there. He wants to be, he'll be disappointed by his analysis if things turn the other way around. But of course, we're disappointed that we lost the connection. And I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to wrap it up for tonight's edition of the program. Thank you most kindly for joining us on Daily Politics. We'll be back tomorrow live at 8 p.m. exclusive as always on Trust TV. Until next time, I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. For myself and the rest of the team, thank you for joining us tonight. We will see you soon.